because of the way the system is set up, so that most of your CFIs are simply guys working towards being a commercial ATP pilot. They got to get that 1,500 hours, and they're going to step on you and step on anybody else to get there, and they really mean well, but you are not their focus, and that is a problem. Hey, welcome back, pilots, aviators, home builders, and people all across the world who like to talk about cool stuff like building airplanes and experimental aviation. Welcome. Here we are back on my tiny, insignificant little YouTube channel on the big bad internets, coming to you from Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, where we have had all 4 seasons in a week, from 70s to snowfall. It's been fun. Let's go. Let's get into this. Today we're going to talk about my pilot's license. My wife felt like that I had kind of skimmed over that and glossed over it and made it sound like I was basically building an airplane and I was going to go fly it without a license. And that's just not true. That's not what's going to happen at all. I am currently taking lessons again. As I said in my first video, 20 years ago I had 30 years ago, I took lessons as much as I could at the airport I was working part-time at, doing upholstery work, and I would basically trade anything from pulling airplanes in, washing them, running errands for the instructors, whatever I could do to get an hour in the airplane or an hour and a half, whatever I could get. That's what I would do. And that made it rough, right? Because I get one lesson 1 week, and then no lesson for 2 weeks, and then a week, and then, and I got roughly 20 hours in, and I was pretty much pre-solo, and then I had to go get a job, I had bills to pay, things happen, right? We all know that story. Here we are later, I'm back taking pilot lessons, flying lessons, whatever. And it started off pretty good, but I made some mistakes. I'm going to talk to you about them, and hopefully you won't make them. It's an interesting thing. I basically just called up my local flight center and said, hey, I want to get back into flying. Help me out. And they said, sure, no problem, guy. And I started flying, and this was my mistake. First of all, I didn't really do a whole lot of research on any of this. Okay, I really didn't ask anyone how I should go about this. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't do anything. Well, that was a mistake. I called up my local flight center, went down, talked to the guy, got in the plane. We did a 1-hour orientation flight, or whatever they call it, discovery flight. And basically, from the time we went wings level to the time we were on coming back into the pattern, I flew the airplane. And that's not usual, I don't think. But I mean, I flew over downtown Nashville. And it all came back very quickly, right? Like airspeed, altitude, maintaining, pitch, throttle, all of it. It came back really quickly, even though in that case I was doing the discovery flight in a Cherokee, and all I had flown up to that point were Cessna 150, 172s. So I was super excited, booked a lesson. I talked to the instructor, the CFI that I was going to work with, and there were 2 things that should have set off huge alarm bells, and if you hear these, you do some serious thinking. Number 1 was that he was kind of a short timer, and he was going to be he knew that he was leaving probably in November. It ended up being December, but probably in November to be an ATP. Now, we're starting in like April. That's a fairly abbreviated schedule. And I was stupid enough to think that I was going to be able to fly 2 or 3 times a week, no matter what. And that is wrong. So 2 mistakes. First, the instructor was short time. Second, I thought I was going to be able to fly basically whenever I wanted. Well, no. I lost a month of flying because the airplane was down for maintenance. I lost another 2 weeks because, the pilot was sick. I was sick, whatever. So, and weather, weather would just kill you. And because of that, first of all, it interrupts the flow. And the other thing, mistake that I made was because the instructor knew I'd had prior experience, he really rushed me through. And I didn't know enough to feel uncomfortable about that until I had been flying for quite a while, actually. So I think it was my second lesson, actual lesson. So we did the discovery flight. We did a second lesson. The first actual lesson, we just took off, did some stalls, did some slow flight. Nothing big. Pretty easy, pretty simple, and it all came. Again, this is coming back to me, man. Like, I'm there. I'm in it. I'm winning it. That was bad. So I think my third lesson, I'm trying to land the airplane. I'm taxiing the aircraft, and I'm at 4 or 5 hours into this, and I'm looking at other guys, other students who are not anywhere near where I'm at, and I'm like, is this normal? And actually, I asked the CFI that, and he said no. He normally doesn't do this, and that should have also been my mistake. Should have let me know, because regardless of my prior experience, he should have. I don't really know how to express it. He should have slowed me down and made sure that I had everything right before moving on, because I didn't, and I knew that I didn't. I just couldn't express that I didn't. Whatever. So honestly, everything was fine until we start getting to landings. Now, and again, and initially I thought I was just rusty, whatever. But as I continued to struggle with landings, it occurred to me that maybe I was getting bad information, because I had the same issue every time. And anyone that's flown a Cherokee will understand that, especially the Warrior 2 with the non-Hershey bar wing, is that thing will float the entire length of the runway if you let it. Okay? If you need to be at 65 over the numbers and you're at 68 over the numbers, you're going to have trouble getting that plane down. And it really wants to be landed as slow as you possibly can. So if you can touch down at 55 because it's nice and calm and all of that, you need to touch down at 55. If it's a breezy day, then okay, add in your 10 miles per, add in your component, your 10 miles per hour or whatever, or wind value. So if it's 14 mile an hour wind, you'd be landing at 64 miles per hour, whatever. So you add in your speed component and land it at that speed, because if you don't, you're just going to float. And then you're going to have to force the plane down. And that's what I was doing. I was pushing that plane on the runway. And I was having a lot of trouble. And I thought, man, I never had this much trouble before. I mean, landings were never like easy for me, but landings were not something that I struggled with pre-solo, right? And like that was 30 years ago. And I'm calmer now. I'm like better now. Why is it so hard? So it occurred to me to read the POH. And all of the speeds that I'm getting from my CFI are wrong. Except for the downwind. right? From that point on, when I was a beam the numbers, that was the only point where I was correct in landing this aircraft. Everywhere else, first notch of flaps to whatever, was all bad information. And again, I could land the plane this way, but it was wrong. So I read the POH. I made, the next time out, I made like, I don't know, 3, 4 beautiful, smooth landings. Because I wasn't really listening to what the guy in the right seat was saying much at all. I was just kind of like, that guy's ballast at this point. And so, he, after the third one, the CFI turns to me, he's like, "What did you do? What changed? These are like perfect." And I'm like, "Well, I read the manual. I read the POH." So, and I quit listening to him. So when he was over there saying, "You're slow, you're slow, you're slow, you're slow," I just tuned him out. Because before, if he said I was slow because I had dropped below 70 or 75 or whatever it was that he wanted me on final at, when I needed to be at 60 or 65, whatever that was, I would just tune him out. I just maintained the airspeed that the POH called for the conditions. And I don't remember what those specifically were, but it was slower than he wanted me to be by about 10 knots or, mile per hour if that's what you're using. It was, 10 knots slower. So I didn't float. The plane came down like it should, stayed on glide slope like it should. The plane acted like it should. Also, I used the flaps properly, and I incorporated the flaps properly. So, and I'm not going to go into all of the bad stuff. Like, basically, my CFI was having me configure for landing a beam of the numbers. So if I wanted 2 notches of flaps, he was telling me to put them in while I'm still on downwind before I've turned base. No, it slows you down too much. You start sinking too much. Now you're having to add power, and you're fighting the airplane down instead of just letting the airplane land. The airplane wants to land. Just let it land and do what the manual says. It's easy. It's that easy. So I made these good landings, and right away soloed, right? And so I was really happy about that. I was. And then it's like the CFI forgot everything that we had done previously. And so now we're moving on to tower communications. I got to go do 3 solo full stop landings from a tower. That should have been really easy. It was actually really hard. And it was hard for a variety of reasons. It was hard for me because I had kind of quit listening to what he was saying. We had lost that respect, and I had lost the trust in the CFI. And I'm going to tell you why. And this sounds bad. So after I seemed to have just kind of plateaued, wasn't getting better at my landings, wasn't really handling the aircraft in his opinion, very well, my CFI, and I was getting frustrated. I mean, let me tell you, dude, I was getting pretty frustrated because when I did it my way, the landings worked. If I listened to him, my landings wouldn't work. My pattern work was great. All of my maneuvers were good. It was just, getting consistent landings in. And and I could do them if I didn't do what he said, but he wouldn't solo me unless I was doing what he was saying. So it was we're kind of at this impasse, right? because he felt like I was landing too slow. So I go for a stage check with another pilot. Same school, just my CFI made me fly with another CFI. So we do the stage check. We take off. Takeoff's fine. Go out, do some maneuvers. Maneuvers are fine. Stall, deep turn, steep turn, whatever. And then we're going to do some pattern work. Come back around, and the first thing is like, why are you here? Why are you out so far out? Well, that's what I've been shown. He says, well, if you had an engine out right now, you could not reach the airfield. I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me, and I would normally like to be closer, but this is where I've been told to be by my CFI. I'm exactly where I've been told to be. He says, we don't do that anymore. Okay, noted. So then we're get a beam, start the landing procedure, come in, and I'm holding like the perfect landing according to my instructors as far as speeds. And what's not going to be the perfect landing? And I knew it wasn't going to be a perfect landing, but he just said, do the landing. I said, okay. So, of course, we come in, and it's done too fast. So I start floating, so I put the thing down, and it's a good, solid, firm landing. And as we climb out on our touch and go, the check ride CFI says, or stage ride CFI says, why were you so fast? I'm like, well, I literally held every speed that I've been told to do. I was exactly 75 on final. He's like, that's too fast. It's like, I would not be able to land that airplane any better than you did at that speed. He's like, do the landing how you want to do it, the next one. Okay, so the next time, climb up, turn crosswind, turn downwind where I want to, perfect pattern. Get a beam the numbers, do the landing like I want to, set it down like butter. Butter, I'm telling you, it was great. And the stage check guy is like, okay, I'm going to talk to your instructor. We're going to have to talk about these speeds and some of the things he's having you do. And bam, like the second session after that, solo. So then we go to, but again, I'd lost all of this faith in the CFI. So we start towered, and I'm not listening to him. I have trouble, for whatever reason, all of a sudden I have trouble talking on the radio, which I've never had before. And I talked on the radio all the time in my career. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. So, our last flight together, back in November 4-ish, I tell my CFI that, I'm in no hurry. I don't have a class that I need to finish. I don't have a job lined up that I'm going to. I really have no reason to try and burn through the rest of my training just to get done with it. Okay? So, if I need to spend more time on towered, or if I need to do whatever I need to do, I'm okay doing it. It just needs to mean something, right? It can't just be that I'm doing this to do it and continue to pay money. Because at this point, to be honest with you, after I soloed, I kind of felt like my CFI no longer cared. He is totally checked out of that cockpit. He's already planning his career as an airline pilot, and he doesn't care even this little bit about my progress as long as I keep coming back and writing the check, which I did. And then I got annoyed about it. So, but I told him, like, if I need to take 2 weeks off or whatever, that's cool. Whatever I need to do, Just, I'll do it. It's fine. So he says, okay, when we get back, I want to introduce you to your new instructor. Okay. We get to the airfield, new instructor's there, exchange information, try and fly. It took us till the end of the month, like November 28th, I think, 29th, whatever, to fly. Because of weather, and the plane was down for maintenance, and whatever. That's good. When we do fly together, and you're going to think I'm making this up, but this is 100% the truth. This person is CFI. We get it. We take the Cherokee back out, and I told him I set the parameters for the mission. We're gonna do a short little trip down to Shelbyville Airport. Do a few touch and goes, maybe do some maneuvers. It's kind of a get to know you. You talk to me, I talk to you while we're in the airplane, see if we can work together and all of that. And then we go from there. I set the parameters because by this time I had decided that more than anything, I was going to be in control of my own destiny in that cockpit. I had trusted my first CFI and it burned. Didn't want to do that again. So getting in with a new guy, take the flight down to Shelbyville Airport here in Tennessee. And yeah, it's fine. We do the usual stalls, simulated engine out on the way down, just figuring each other out. He needs to see what I can do, and I want to listen to him and see, if he actually has good input. And we get down there, and I'm doing some touch and goes, and because I hadn't been in an airplane for a few weeks, I'm landing it really flat. Like I typically would land, and my tendency is to land main gear, and then I just kind of settle the nose down, and I do it a little fast, which I know I shouldn't do it, but whatever. That's just how I've been doing it, and I need to fix it. But for for that day, I wasn't overly concerned with it because I was landing the airplane pretty flat. Now I was not tricycling it. Or not, pardon me, I was not wheelbarrowing it and hitting the nose gear first. And I wasn't slamming it down. They were nice, more or less 3-point landings. Firm, but not bad. So, and here comes the first of the deal breakers. First, we take off, we do these touch and goes as I'm climbing out, on one of the last ones, I had to put my coffee down there, sorry. As I'm climbing out on the last one that I did, maybe the second last one, whatever, he says, I'll take the next one. So I land, do the touch and go. As I climb out to turn crosswind, he says, nothing. Because I'm waiting at any moment for him to say my controls. Turn crosswind, nothing. Downwind, nothing. Turn base, he still hasn't said anything. I'm still flying the airplane. So I'm configuring for landing for me, right, the way I want to land. And as I turn final, I finish configuring to land. And that day we were doing 2 notches of flaps instead of 3 because while there wasn't a lot of wind, it was gusting. And when I have gusts, I just don't like to have full flaps. So I'm at 2 notches and I'm coming down pretty good. And all of a sudden this guy wakes up and, I said I was going to take that one. I got it. My controls. Fine. Your plane. He lights the thing off and brings her down, and I mean he bounces this plane so hard and so high that he had to add power to stabilize the airplane and land the airplane. Okay, Like, it was a ridiculous, like, I've never personally had a landing that bad. Okay. That I can recall. I certainly, never had to have power to settle the plane, put it back down. I've done go arounds where I didn't feel good about it, but I have, and he was actually, I think he was borderline about to do a go around, and honestly, it was very nearly a bad time. Um, he was very fortunate in that he did let the nose settle instead of stalling the airplane, but whatever. So as we're climbing out, and here's the deal breaker, and you're not going to believe me. I swear to you that you think I'm lying, but as we go crosswind, and he says your controls, I say my controls. As I'm turning it full crosswind and climbing up to pattern, he looks at me and he says, "I think that's the first time I've landed this airplane since I got my private, his PPO." And I was shocked. Dude, that's at least 250 hours ago, man. 250 hours. Right? And more, because this guy's flying every day with other students. That's crazy, man. That is nuts. Nuts. How in the world could you get in an airplane with a student that you don't know, in an airplane that you're no longer proficient and current in? Okay, you fly Cessnas every day, but that's not a Cherokee. And this guy, he didn't have any idea what the speeds were supposed to be. He was Cessna speeds, all of that. He was having to ask me about the speeds, which was fine, I know. But that's dangerous. And I just couldn't deal with it. I was just like, you know what? That's kind of a deal breaker. And on the way back, we had the final deal breaker when he basically said that regardless of what the POH said, that we were going to do short field or soft field takeoffs the way he had been trained to do them, which is wrong in a Cherokee because they're doing it like a Cessna. And so that was it. That was the end of that school, and I found a new school, a new flying school. And I looked, and this time I did it right. I looked everywhere. I called a bunch of people. I talked to a bunch of people. I talked to the instructors. I knew better what questions to ask. And I'm going to tell you that if you are either looking for an instructor or you need to get current again or whatever, look around, because a lot of these places are, I'm going to use a term a friend on the internet uses, puppy mills, where these are just ATP pilots that are just building time to move through, right? The only reason they're a CFI is so they can get hours in so they can go be an airline pilot somewhere. And they don't care, and their teaching, a lot of it is just sloppy. They don't care if you pass. They don't, they're just, as long as you continue to show up to pay, they're going to keep you in the airplane. And that's dangerous in and of itself. But even worse is you have guys running around like both of the CFIs I have. One is so far gone ATP, he isn't even in the cockpit with the student. His mind is elsewhere. The second was not even smart enough to get current in the airplane that he was going to fly and instruct in with a student. That's just dumb. So, ask good questions. Figure things out. Talk to different schools and students. What kind of airplanes do they have? If they only have Cessnas, they're probably okay, because the other problem I had is I was being trained in the Cherokee. They had one. So when it went down, done. If it was rented, done. I couldn't fly that day. So I'm at a different school. I'm having to go back. I'm now in a 172. Does that bother me? No. I fly close enough to the same. I got to relearn some speeds, and the Cessna sinks really fast where the Cherokee floats really well. That's different. I'm okay with it. I'm learning it. And I'll re-solo in that aircraft very soon, probably within the next 4 flight hours. But don't be like me. Be smarter than me. Ask good questions. Make sure that you know what's going on. Make sure they have enough aircraft. If the aircraft are down and you can't fly because you fly one aircraft and they only have one of those aircraft and they have 6 of another, ask yourself, why did they put you in that one? And why they won't cross-train you in the other one? Well, we all know the answer to that. But and that's kind of the end of this video. Okay, I mean, bottom line, don't do what I did. When you're looking for an instructor, ask good questions. Do flights with other instructors. One of the most important questions that I think you can ask anytime is, if you're having problems with something, if they're willing to hand you off to another instructor for a couple of hours so that maybe that instructor can help you. Maybe you're having trouble with landings, or maybe you're having trouble with being in the foggles because you're doing IFR stuff. Maybe you have trouble with steep turn or points, maneuver points or whatever. If you aren't getting it with one instructor, you deserve to ask yourself, maybe I need to hear it from somebody else. Maybe somebody else is better at explaining it than the guy I have. And you should have an instructor that is competent and comfortable enough to say, you know who's really good at teaching turns around a point is this guy over here. So I schedule 2 hours with him or her and go fly with that person and get that segment down and then come back and I'll finish you out. And if they're not willing to do that, I think you need to look for a different flight school. Okay? That's just like, most flight schools don't do tail wheel. So when I want to go do tail wheel, I'm going to have a different instructor for that. When I want to do high performance, they don't have high performance aircraft. I have to go to a different flight instructor. So just because I have to go somewhere else doesn't mean that I'm not going to come back to the people that I'm working with now. It just means that I need a specialized person. If you are just not getting landings, it may not be your fault. It could just be the instructor, and it may just benefit you so much just to have somebody else take a look at what you're doing. And your instructor should know that, and they should be comfortable in handing you off. I'm going to close this video out with referencing another video. Lou Dix Aviation, I watch his channel quite often. He's funny. He made a great video about the 3 types of instructors, and it is hilarious. And I've had all 3 types of those instructors over the previous time and this time. And you should definitely go watch that video. Honestly, my first instructors from 30 years ago, those guys were awesome. They were professional instructors. That's all they did. That's all they had done. They would not BS you even a little bit about any of it. And I look back and I feel very sad that I did not continue forward with them, because I feel like I would have gotten my license sooner and been a better pilot coming out of it. And I think that there's a lot of holes in the current way that your CFI works because of the way the system is set up, so that most of your CFIs are simply guys working towards being a commercial ATP pilot. They got to get that 1,500 hours, and they're going to step on you and step on anybody else to get there, and they really mean well, but you are not their focus, and that is a problem. And the FAA needs to fix it. I don't know how they can, and until then, watch some videos, get instruction, read, do your work, go be a pilot. That's all I'm going to say in this video. I hope that it wasn't too long and boring and you stayed with me. Don't do what I did. Be smarter than me, and have a great day. And next video, maybe we'll talk about, or maybe do something that actually contributes to the building of an airplane. Until next time, we'll see you.